Time is now 8:30. Seeing that we do have all these great people here, let's do a roll call. Let's get the party started, huh?
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Chair Alvarez.
Present.
Member Sawyer.
Here.
Let the record reflect that all members are present with the exception of Member Rogers.
Very well. Let's go ahead and move on to public comment, item number 2. This is the time when any person may address matters not listed on this agenda, but which are within the subject matter of the jurisdiction. The public may comment on agenda items when the item is called. Each speaker is allowed 3 minutes. Do we have any recorded messages or callers this morning?
We have, there are no raised hands at this time, and there are no general comment messages. However, there are messages, there is a recorded message for item 3.1 today.
Very well. Let me see. And I take it we'll read or listen to that item once item 3.1 is presented, correct?
That's correct.
Very well. With that being said, let's go ahead and move on to, let's close public comment and move on to item 3. Rafa, if you'd like to present this item, it would be greatly appreciated, sir.
Sure. Good morning, and good morning, Vice Mayor Alvarez, Councilmember Sawyer, and everyone else on the call. Item 3.0 is new business, and therefore 3.1 is Mendocino survey results and proposed design. And we have Deputy Director for Traffic, or TPW, Robert Sprinkle, making a presentation this morning to the enemy.
And I am attempting to, oh, there we go. There's Deputy Director Sprinkle. I will be pulling up the his presentation in just one moment.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
We can. Thank you.
Great, thanks.
And I apologize for the delay. It'll just be one more moment.
Not a problem.
Morning, Rob, and welcome to the Downtown Subcommittee.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Right, and I will go ahead and whenever you are ready.
I am ready. So thank you for having me this morning. My name is Rob Sprinkle. I'm the Deputy Director of Traffic Engineering for the City of Santa Rosa. And today we'll be discussing the Mendocino Avenue reconfiguration. Go to the next slide, please. So I'll briefly go over our agenda for today. So I'm going to go over the background for this project, how it got started. I'll go over the timeline briefly. We'll look at survey results that were taken over the summer, talk about the proposed implementation plan, and get comments back from the committee and from the public. Next slide, please. So the city is embarking on a project to re-slurry several streets in the downtown area. One of the streets being Mendocino Avenue between 4th Street and College Avenue. So this gives us a perfect opportunity and kind of a blank slate for the street to restripe it in a different configuration if we choose to do so. So we've been working with the public, and we've had a public meeting, and I'll get into that a little bit more, to talk about some of the different options for this roadway. So this is the segment we're looking at on the aerial here from College to 4th Street, or to the downtown Courthouse Square. Next slide, please. So the existing configuration of this segment of road is by and far 2 lanes in the northbound direction and 1 lane in the southbound direction. So this is a cross section of the roadway configuration looking north. So you see the taillights of the 2 in the center lane and in the righter lane. And for the majority of the street, there's parking allowed on both sides. And at some of the intersections, that parking is stripped in order to provide for left turn movements and left turn lane at the intersections. So with the construction of Old Courthouse Square, or the square being reunited, basically, that really decreased the amount of traffic that has been on Mendocino Avenue in the segment between 10th and Old Courthouse Square by about 60%, which is quite a bit. This has allowed us to kind of reimagine what we want to do with this segment of roadway and remove one of the travel lanes in the northbound direction without really affecting the mobility of the traffic in this segment of roadway. So we're recommending that, yeah, we don't need that extra capacity, and we went out to the public to get comments back on what the best use of that would be. So the project that we're moving forward with is a slurry project. And so that basically allows us to change, like I mentioned, change the striping. So with this project, we are not looking at changing the width of the sidewalk, installing bulb outs or doing street trees. That's out of the scope of this project, but it does allow us to move forward with some other options with the striping. Next slide, please. So some of the preliminary concepts we had that we brought to the public and wanted feedback on were these three concepts. One was changing one of the northbound travel lanes into a center turn lane. The second was to install angled parking along the side of the street to increase the number of parking spaces. And then the third was to add bike lanes along the segment of roadway. Next slide, please. So looking at the timeline, we had intended to meet with the downtown subcommittee in May, and that meeting was canceled, unfortunately. But we did continue to meet with our downtown action organization. We held a community meeting in May 17th and went to the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Board May 19th. And then we held an online survey from May to the end of June, where we received we had a questionnaire and received results on what the public was interested in seeing this segment of the street look like. And there's a little gap in our schedule here because we unfortunately did lose our active transportation planner, Bjorn Grievenberg. He moved on to another position in another jurisdiction, unfortunately. And so there has been a little bit of gap, but we're trying to get this back on track and move forward with our final design for this project. So we're going to be meeting today with the subcommittee, and then we're going to be meeting again with the Downtown Action Organization in the middle of October, and back to the Bicycle and Pedestrian Board Advisory Board in the middle of November. Next slide, please. So some of the themes we heard from the stakeholders at the community meetings that they wanted to create a more pedestrian-friendly experience. There was complaints about speeding along this segment of roadway. They wanted to see more aesthetics, art, planning, outdoor dining. Some suggested closing a portion of the road to vehicles entirely. Some looked at maybe closing it to traffic in one direction. But overall, the concept of having a lower stress segment of roadway was one of the kind of prevailing type of themes that we heard from the public. Next slide, please. So we also heard relatively little about increasing the parking supply in this segment of roadway with the angled parking, but there was a strong contingency that really likes the concept of parklets in the area and wanted to retain the parklets that were there and propose business would be adding parklets along this segment of roadway to have a more pedestrian friendly and more vibrant type of segment of roadway. Next slide, please. So there is very little feedback on the center turn lane option, as the segment of roadway really doesn't have a lot of left turns or driveways that need a center turn lane for access. So that was recognized by the community. Next slide, please.
Mr. Sprinkle, and through the mayor or through our chair, do you want questions while you are presenting, or would you prefer that we wait until the presentation is complete?
I prefer if you wait till it's complete, but okay. I'm happy to go back to slides and reference them.
No, that'll work actually.
I might be answering your questions as we go.
It's true. Thank you. I appreciate it.
So the surveys, as I mentioned, were open from the middle of May to June. We had over 1,000 responses, which is great. Here's a couple samples of the questions we wanted to know: how people use Mendocino Avenue, and if they were the business owners, if they were downtown, if they lived in the downtown, if they visited the downtown. So it gave us a framework of people who were answering the questions, what their frame of reference was from. Next slide, please. So going over some of the survey results. This is an overall ranking of the surveys that received. We have the overall at the top, and then broken down underneath that is the rankings from people who visit downtown, live in the downtown, work in the downtown, have a business on Mendocino, or a business in the downtown area. So from the results that we received, they're all actually fairly close, and we see that kind of throughout the surveys that, you know, everyone has a different perspective and are bringing their perspectives to our attention. The parklets and the desire to have parklets, more outdoor dining, ranked the highest overall. Then bike lanes, then down the traffic circulation and on-street parking. And then if you look at the breakdown of the different who is responding favorably to each one's on the on-street parking, for example, the Mendocino business owners ranked that very high as wanting to have the on-street parking, 4.7 out of 5. And the downtown businesses also supported that. Whereas overall, the bike lanes from people who live in the downtown was a very high ranked item as well at 3.9. And the outdoor seatings for people who live downtown is 4.1. So different perspectives and different, which is exactly what we wanted to see. We wanted to see who was responding to what different items more favorably. So it helps give us a frame of reference of where people are coming from. Next slide, please. So we also had the survey look at the 3 options that we presented and got feedback on what was preferred from the overall survey results. So, and the highest ranking one came back was to install the bike lanes. There's an A and B down here, and those are related to 2 different layouts on the bike lanes at intersections. And those are related to whether we wanted to strip parking at the intersection to provide buffered bike lanes, which is the B, or to maintain one side of parking at the intersections and include the left turn lanes, which is A. And we actually decided to go a different route than A or B and eliminate the left turn lanes at the intersections to help calm the traffic and reduce the speeds in the area. Next slide, please. So moving on to the proposed design, from the feedback that we heard from the public, we're taking the public, these 1,054 surveys and trying to consolidate them into the overall views of everyone providing input. So bike lanes was definitely something that was proposed. And I know that protected bike lanes was specifically proposed. And in reading some of the comments in the attached letters to the committee, I understand the desire to have the protected bike lanes in this segment of roadway. However, there's also a strong feeling for the parklets, and in order to have protected bike lanes with parklets, those, if you shift the parklet, over to the travel lane and have the protected bike lane between the curb and the parklet, then you can't have a bike lane between a parklet and the curb because people are then crossing to get to the parklet over the bike lane, and that creates a direct conflict. So our proposal was to install the bike lanes, reduce the number of left turns along the street, not prohibiting them, but reduce the left turn lanes to help induce traffic calming. And to also, by doing this, we're also allowing for more parking spaces along Mendocino Avenue. And those 15 extra parking spaces that would be added aren't necessarily parking spaces, but they would be for parking or bike corrals or parklets, but they afford the opportunity to use that space that would otherwise be able to use. So this option also maximizes the parklet opportunities, which was one of the highest things that we saw from the community. And then with that, John, I'd be happy to go back. This is the end of the presentation. I'd be happy to go back and answer your question.
Sure. Thanks, Rob. And I'm not sure if this is for you or for Raisa, someone who is directly knowledgeable about the current status of parklets on 4th Street. If I'm not mistaken, I have seen a fair number of parklets being removed. And I assume, but I don't know if they're being removed permanently or if they're just being redesigned and then replaced. This is why, Raisa, you could probably address this. If they're being removed because of, for whatever reason, whether it's a lack of desire to participate in the program, or if they feel they're not as necessary anymore, whatever that might be, and you could probably answer that piece too. But if indeed the parklet program on 4th Street is being abandoned by the merchants themselves, then what confidence do we have that for some reason Mendocino Avenue is going to be more successful than 4th or 5th Street has been with this program?
Okay, so firstly, Cadence Allenson is also on the call, and she's been amazing in helping us coordinate with the merchants, at least in the Rovo Square area in particular. So if you could, yes, she's been elevated. But just to set the groundwork on this, we did, once council passed the permanent parklet program, we did give the those with a temporary program from leftover from the pandemic a timeline in which they had to remove their parklets, and so if they didn't submit an application for a permanent parklet, they had to remove them by a certain date, and only some of the restaurants are deciding to move forward with a permanent parklet. I'm going to let Cadence answer this more completely, but I will say that anyone who is interested, even including those who are already moving forward with a permanent parklet, the costs for building those out are an applicable expense for our facade improvement program. But I can have Cadence talk about who at this point has submitted and what the status of that is.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Rob,
Cadence was going to answer that question real quick.
Is she here? Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
She here. Okay.
I'll just chime in quickly and say, of our downtown businesses who have parklets, who had temporary parklets, the majority are keeping or are interested in keeping space outdoor for dining. So some of those will not have parklets. They might have sidewalk seating. For instance, Rushing River is expanding their sidewalk seating. On 4th, we have, I think, 5 businesses who have submitted applications for parklets, plus 4 others who are aiming for sidewalk seating because it's more suitable for their physical space. And then on 5th and Mendocino, there's 1 each. And then with new restaurants coming in, they're being made aware as they look at space for lease that this is an option for them as well, which makes it really appealing. And I will say that the costs have not been, all of the business owners are pretty pleased with what the city has done, what Race and her team and Gabe and his team have done to reduce the cost to, practically nothing. And then also supporting them with the facade improvement program funds, that's made a big impact for a lot of them as well. So most of them right now are moving forward with the permanent process, through Gabe with the permanent process. So just working to support them getting those done as soon as possible so we can get the final pallets out as soon as possible as well.
Great, thanks, Cadence. And because one of the concerns I had, and I know that it's shared by staff, and I would hope that it's shared also by those that are looking to install more permanent parklets, is the consistency of design and the aesthetics. And we all could see that there was that just leaving it up to the kind of a whatever they wanted to do wasn't a particularly pleasing result. And so I'm pleased to hear that the restaurants are looking forward to this program in its new iteration with consistent appearance and an eye on aesthetics and therefore the quality experience of the downtown. So I'm optimistic, and I just wanted to clarify that piece because I was concerned that if it wasn't working on 4th or 5th Street, why would we think it would work on Mendocino? So I'm heartened to hear that it's moving in a great direction. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And to add to that, I do want to thank Rafa for assisting a couple of additional business owners who are planning to move forward with the with the parklet program. So there's definitely movement and intent to participate in there. Now, for those of us who might not know what the Facade Improvement Fund is, could we explain that, please?
Yeah,
Or
we
fund,
actually, yeah, we're gonna, we can go into that under department reports. We're gonna cover that there. Thank you.
Perfect. Now, if there's no additional questions for staff, let's go ahead and open up the public comment on item 3.1.
Can we do the, so we don't forget, can we do the recorded message for that first?
Oh, absolutely. I believe
Okay.
that was online. Absolutely.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Mhm.
And while we do have a number of people waiting to provide public comment, I just wanted to let members of the public know that if they wish to speak during this item, they will be able to do so by utilizing the raised hand feature in Zoom or by pressing *9 on their phone, and then they will be given the ability to address the committee. Just one moment while I
Thank you, Secretary Clear.
thank you, and I'm just going to pull up the public comment screen, and we'll listen to that voicemail first. Just one moment. Okay. You know what? We seem to be having an issue with that recording. If you can hold just one moment, I will pull it from another source.
Very well.
Eileen, if it's easier, we can do the public comments and you can pull it while other people are speaking.
Certainly, that sounds good. Thank you.
Okay.
Oops. I apologize. I'm just having a small technical moment there.
No.
All right.
It gave me a chance to go find a new pin since I dropped the other one. So you're perfectly fine.
Great. So the first caller is Adrian Covert. You have been given permission to speak. If you would please confirm your ability to see the screen and introduce yourself for the record.
I can. This is Adrian Covert. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the presentation and for the opportunity to make public comment. I live in downtown. I bike downtown virtually every time I go. I've got my toddler on his toddler seat on the bike. We go all the time, but I'm pretty rare because I've been biking for years and feel very comfortable on a bike. But we really need protected bike lanes to induce bike demand downtown. There aren't safe opportunities to bike downtown. There isn't a single protected bike lane in the city of Santa Rosa. And I was really excited about this project as an opportunity to do that. Because as currently, car infrastructure currently occupies half the entire surface area of downtown Santa Rosa. And parking alone is half of that. So about 25% of downtown is parking. And the city's recent downtown parking analysis showed 75% of all downtown parking spots are unused on a typical busy day. This is a tremendous waste of public space. Yet I was dismayed, frankly, to find that this plan proposes creating additional public space to parking with 15 parking spots, which could make Mendocino even less welcoming for pedestrians and bikes, despite the road diet, which I appreciate and is otherwise good. This plan proposes unprotected bike lanes adjacent to traffic. And just for the record, an unprotected bike lane isn't a bike lane at all. It's just a car shoulder with a bike painted on it. So I would recommend this plan enhance the use of public space by reducing parking and not adding. And I understand the issue with the parklets. So whether or not they're installed is hypothetical. Some future businesses might do it. But as of now, real people want protected bike lanes like right now. So there's that. Also, 4th Street has only, I believe, 3 parklets on it. And Mendocino has even fewer storefronts, dining storefronts than 4th Street does. So we're looking at maybe 2 or 3 at the most parklets on this entire stretch. It seems a bit excessive to preclude safety for cyclists for a hypothetical 1 or 2, maybe 3 parklets. But second, even with parklets, there are options to protect the bike lanes. You could put the bike lane between the parklet and the sidewalk, as is already done in New York City. And yes, that does create a conflict, but it's a less dangerous conflict than cars pose to bikes. Alternately, we could lump north and southbound bike traffic on the west side of the street, and that would free up the east side of the street for parklets, and it could help feed car traffic into the bike lane that already exists north of College on Mendocino. Thank you all for my comments.
Thank you, Adrian.
The next speaker will be Jenny Bard, followed by Chris Eggers. Ms. Bard, you have been given permission to speak. If you would confirm your ability to see the timer. And
yes, good morning, everyone. Thank you for bringing this item forward. And I also support the comments that were submitted and Adrian's comment just now. One additional consideration would be looking at lane width. It's currently 11 feet for the 2 driving lanes. And if you look at the National Association of City Transportation Officials, their urban street design guide state that lane widths of 10 feet are appropriate in urban areas and have a positive impact on a street safety without impacting operations. Additionally, they suggest parking lanes can be 7 feet. So with that, you would have 2 additional feet just by rethinking the widths of the lanes. And certainly many cities all over the country use 9-foot lanes. I remember when Dan Burden came to the city of Santa Rosa and led us on a envisioning process for Mendocino Avenue many years ago, he said the lanes could be 9 feet. So that was long ago, and it certainly is worth looking at for this section, especially since I imagine the buses and trucks aren't going down this lane, they're going down Healdsburg Avenue. And so this is a prime street to re-envision for bicyclists and pedestrians to really bring forth all of the components of what makes a bicycle-friendly street, including, I love the idea of bike corrals and bike parking in front of every business. Secure bike parking in front of every business. This could be accomplished. If there's not room, if it's not on the property, then it could be in the corral area. So I definitely want to highlight that. In addition, I really want there to be good thought on what happens when you go from Mendocino across College down to 4th Street, at that intersection specifically. I know the border of this project seems to end more at where it tees off at Healdsburg, but we really need some good bike markings there to help people know where they're supposed to go, so the cars know where the bicyclists belong and have a right to on the road to get across College and begin the merge over to the left to get onto that Mendocino stretch. I was just in Mill Valley this weekend on Camino Alto. They have big, huge letters, bikes merge left, huge lane, huge words to warn cars that they're going to be moving over to the left to get into that Mendocino Avenue portion. So I'd like us to really think of other ways to utilize best practices. Thank you.
Thank you.
the next caller will be Chris Eggers, followed by Geg Haito. Mr. Eggers, you have been given permission to speak. If you would confirm your ability to see the timer and introduce yourself.
Good morning. This is Ms. Chris Eggers, and I can see the timer. Thank you. I just wanted to say I'm really thank you for this project, for the work you've done on it so far, and I'm excited to see that parklets and bike lanes have are a priority from the people surveyed. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think that the design can be made to have both parklets and protected bike lanes. Right now, the way it's designed, the bikes are put between traffic and protected by a painted line. And we need protected bike lanes. In 3 nationwide surveys, 60 to 70% of the people surveyed said that they would do their local errands on bike if there were protected bike lanes. And paint is not protection. You're putting people right there between the cars that are parked and between the traffic. And if someone opens their door and they're parked, the bicycle is going to have to go into traffic. So it's just not a tenable solution. We need protected bike lanes in the city of Santa Rosa. And like the previous caller said, currently we have 0 protected bike lanes. And so there are 60 to 70% of people who would ride bikes who don't. I'm a fearless cyclist, so that's not necessary for me, but I'm concerned about the families and the people who'd like to go downtown, but aren't able to do so on their bikes because it's not bicycle friendly. When you travel the world and you go to cities like Amsterdam and cities in Germany and other European countries, their downtowns are vibrant and alive. There are people in the cafes, there are people in the restaurants, there are people walking in and out of the stores, and it's because it's pedestrian and bike friendly environment. And I think that's the key to revitalizing downtown Santa Rosa, is to make it welcoming, to make it a magnet for people to come in and to do their shopping there. And currently when people drive down the Mendocino corridor, they're usually on their way to somewhere else. And if it's not on their agenda to stop on Mendocino Avenue, they don't. And slowing that whole situation down and making it open to people who are using active transportation is a way to continue to bring in business and to get to people to go to stores and restaurants that they might not necessarily have planned on going to. So I'm in favor of bike lanes, but I think they need to be protected bike lanes to be actually serviceable and used. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next caller will be Gig Hightow, followed by Steve Bertelbaugh. Mr. Hightow, you've been given permission to speak. If you would confirm your ability to see the timer and introduce yourself if you so choose.
I see the timer, and my name is Gig Hightow. I live downtown, I work downtown, and I'm a downtown business owner. And I prefer bike lanes, yes, parklets, no. I do sometimes ride my bicycle on Mendocino Avenue, so having a bike lane would be really nice. Protected bike lanes are definitely better, but if that's an issue, I'd rather have a bike lane than no bike lane. So I don't really personally care about the protected. It would be great if you could do it, but if not, just to have a bike lane would be better than nothing. As far as the parklets go, my wife and I like to enjoy the restaurants and bars downtown, and sometimes we like to sit out, on the sidewalk, but not in the street. So I like open air, dining outside on the sidewalk, but not parklets in the street where cars are driving and there's exhaust and everything. So the only other comment I would like to make is on your survey, you had over 1,000 results. That's a very good margin of error. So I think you should give a lot of weight to the results of the survey, because the people who responded are people who are interested. And so those are valid results. So that's it. Bike lanes, yes. Parklets, no. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Steve Bertelbaugh, followed by Eris Weaver. Mr. Bertelbaugh, you've been given permission to speak. If you would confirm your ability to see the timer and introduce yourself.
Yes, Steve Bertelbaugh with the Transportation and Land Use Coalition. And yes, I do see the timer. I want to commend the effort that's been put into this. And I want to say a few words about the width of traffic lanes downtown. The design of the road has much more influence on the speed that cars travel at than the speed limits. So 9-foot lanes in the city can easily be the norm and provide more space for the cyclists, whether the lane is next to the sidewalk or between the parked cars and the lanes. There are ways to protect those lanes besides moving them next to the sidewalk. You can put in bollards. It's important to have safe bicycling as well as safe driving and safe walking. So please focus on making those bike lanes safe and attractive for users. We've got to move from our traditional car culture to one that involves much more cycling and walking. And this is a good step in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you.
My apologies. The next speaker will be Eris Weaver. If you would please confirm your ability to see the timer on the screen and introduce yourself if you so choose. You've been given permission to speak.
I don't see her speaking. Oh, there she is.
Here I am.
There you
Eris
are.
Weaver. Hi, I'm the executive director of the Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition, and I'm going to do my best to not repeat anything that has already been said by the previous speakers. You have passed a climate emergency resolution. Your own city's done a parking study saying that there is way more parking than is even used. To even consider an option that increases parking is unconscionable. It's against all of the stated values of the city. I'm like Ms. Eggers, a fairly fearless cyclist, but you know, you don't have to go to the Netherlands to see better bike infrastructure. I feel safer bicycling in Oakland and Richmond than I do here in Santa Rosa. And that is because they have prioritized cyclist safety and put in protected cycle lanes. And that's what you need to do here. I walk, ride, and shop on that stretch every single work day. And many more people would use it if it were protected. The other thing I want to say about the parklets and the bike parking. Okay, with the parklet thing during COVID, we've already shown that, a willingness to turn car parking into something else. Don't say, oh, we're going to put in extra parking and maybe turn it into bike parking and parklets. Because as soon as you've got a parking space, nobody ever wants to give it up. Even if they're not getting used, nobody ever wants to take away a parking space. I think every block should have the equivalent of one car parking space turned into a bike corral. Especially now you've added these scooters. And there's 200 scooters in town that have to be locked to something. The city already doesn't have enough bike parking. And now you've added 200 things that need to be locked to something. So the city really needs to up your game on getting more secure bike parking, not just downtown, but throughout the city. So follow the best practices and make protected bike lanes. Don't add more parking. Add bicycle parking and follow your own stated goals towards climate change and livability downtown. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I apologize. We're clearly having some issues with our timer this morning.
Not a problem.
The next speaker will be Colin Thomas. You have been given permission to speak. If you would confirm your ability to see the timer, that would be great. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Colin Thomas. I can't see speaker. The timer side, and I am the assistant trans advocate with Disability Services and Legal Centers. Having bike lanes, protected bike lanes, must. for people with disabilities. They may have a bike that may be lower to the ground to accommodate their disability and would be hard to be seen by moving cars. They may have a standard bike, but may have a disability that can impede their mobility on a bike, or may be less comfortable and more fearful biking so close to cars. Having protected bike lanes also allows someone to avoid heavy foot traffic on a sidewalk or an obstacle. This is especially true for those who have a mobility disability or use a mobility device. I also agree with past comments that the 15 extra bike lanes or 15 extra parking spots, are necessary, and parking should be redone so it's a more bike and pedestrian friendly area. My last comment is I do agree with the mention of closing at least some part of Mendocino Avenue to vehicles, so there is a true car-free, walkable, friendly bike and pedestrian network. Thank you.
Thank you.
And just one moment while we get this reset. There we go. The next speaker will be Callum Weeks. Mr. Weeks, you've been given permission to speak. If you would confirm your ability to see the timer and introduce yourself.
I can see it. And good morning. My name is Callum Weeks. Thank you very much, Vice Mayor Alvarez and Councilmember Sawyer, for being here this morning. I am actually here in my personal capacity as a member of the JC neighborhood and as a member of a local advisory board for the city of Santa Rosa. I would just like to offer brief comments. At the risk of repeating myself, I think Mr. Covert might have been recommending, and I would echo this proposal. I don't know why we can't just shift over the bike lanes to the eastern side, the western side of the street, so that it's a two-way bike lane. And then we have parklets on the eastern side, which to me seems like a solution in the sense of that we could have the protected bike lanes, two directions, and then still have the parklets. So it seems to me like that would be a win-win. And this is not uncommon. I mean, if you go to Seattle, you see two-way bike lanes all over the city. It's actually quite common in a lot of cities. And I'd very much like to see us adopt something similar and consider, as Ms. Weaver noted, also expanding our protected bike lanes throughout the downtown area as soon as possible, specifically along B Street and other core arteries. I can tell you in the past 2 months alone, I've almost been clipped twice. I ride my bike almost daily to my office, which is in the co-lab of the Press Democrat building. It is not safe to drive, or to bike downtown without the risk of potentially getting clipped by a car. And I would really encourage serious considerations for the protected bike lanes. As I noted, I don't think I actually mentioned this to you, but one of the things that I think is kind of a secondary benefit is, in addition to having protected bike lanes, it creates an opportunity for potentially public art displays, an opportunity for people to get creative to help brighten our downtown area, which I think we should be encouraging. And then to also echo Ms. Weaver's comments, we are facing a climate crisis. There's no doubt about it. There are ways to adapt. There are ways that we can actually, I think, sufficiently meet the demands of everyone. But we need to be intentional about our designs and about our approaches to things. And that certainly starts with reducing and not creating more parking. I don't see why we can't take the existing parking spots and slant them, whatever the terminology is. I just can't imagine a world where we need 15 additional parking spots unless it's legally required for disability reasons. There's no reason they should be added. With that, again, thank you very much for your time. I do appreciate staff's efforts on this, but I do hope they hear our comments and that they take them into consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next speaker will be Andy Ridge. Mr. Rich, you've been given permission to speak. If you would confirm your ability to see the timer and introduce yourself.
Thank you. Yes, I can see the timer. My name's Andy Rich. I live downtown. I walk a portion of the Mendocino Ave that we are discussing today, basically daily. My wish really would be to see the whole Mendocino Ave closed off from vehicle traffic. I know that's not under consideration here, so as an attempt to that, it would be nice to have protected bike lanes to be able to ride safely downtown. I think especially given that B Street is such an easy corridor for vehicles to get downtown, we do not need to give vehicles precedent along Mendocino Ave, along this portion of downtown. As many other callers have noted, many other flourishing downtowns have emphasized the access and safe use for bicycles and pedestrians. And I think for overall downtown Santa Rosa, it would be greatly beneficial to add more bicycle lanes, protected bicycle lanes, and emphasize the use by pedestrians and bicyclists. I don't have too much comment on the parklets. I think parklets are a good use of public space, but I think in the Mendocino Ave location, if it's one or the other, I think a protected bicycle lane would be more important than additional parklets. And I'd also say one thing about the survey that we were discussing. I used the survey as well, but we didn't really see great options there for really reducing vehicular traffic in the Mendocino Junction. So while the results might show that, you know, vehicles should retain precedent in Mendocino Ave, I don't think we were really given an option to reduce vehicular traffic downtown. With that, I will yield my time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Chris G. Chris, you have been given permission to speak. If you would confirm your ability to see the timer and introduce yourself.
Thanks. I can see the timer. My name is Chris G, and I work downtown and frequently travel and patronize several businesses on this corridor by bike and on foot, and occasionally by car, although I'd like to do that less. I'm really pleased and excited about aspects of this plan, you know, particularly fewer traffic lanes, the traffic calming measures, and indeed new bike lanes. When we met on this in May, I really felt like option 3, the one that was being presented as the preferred option now, is kind of the absolute bare minimum. And I said so at the time, but I really want us to do better than the bare minimum. The feedback at that meeting, and of course, in all the comments we've just heard, is that we need alternatives that further prioritize pedestrians and cyclists, particularly the consideration of alternatives that would allow for protected or buffered bike lanes, which are attractive for a much wider variety of cyclists. Certainly understand that that would require trade-offs, so giving up parking and potentially closing down some of the opportunities for parklets, at least where we would sacrifice parking. And I think those are trade-offs that are worth making. As others have pointed out, it's well known that we have too much parking downtown. So it is really hard to understand why this plan would propose more parking. It's only because, well, that's how you get more parklets. And parklets are nice, but I think we're really over prioritizing them here relative to other interests. As the subcommittee and some of the other callers have alluded to, there are fewer of them now than there were during COVID. And I can appreciate that businesses want the option for parklets, but I think it's unfortunate to sacrifice the option of safer cycling and the systemic benefits that come with that, and to effectively commit to a lot more parking if people don't use the parklets for the sake of a few businesses that might want to install parklets in the future. Similar to what Adrian said earlier, you know, instead of saying we need this option along the entire corridor, I'd really prefer to see some deeper consideration of the types of businesses that are here where the parklets are most practical or desirable, and how to accommodate those without sacrificing all the other interests. On this point, I really want to emphasize that this is a public right-of-way, and to the extent that the interests of a handful of individual businesses, which are important, but to the extent that those are in conflict with those of the wider community, I think there's really a case to be made for tilting more toward the latter. And finally, I think a number of folks have, underneath a lot of the comments here is the recognition that this is a really important marquee downtown street. So what we do here has really important symbolic value. So in light of all of this, I think it's unfortunate that we're not seeing any new alternatives versus what we saw several months ago, and would love to see ones that consider some of these other possibilities. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
I will now pull over the public comment, the voicemail public comment.
Thank you.
I apologize. The WAV file does not appear to be connecting to the meeting. I will transcribe this individual's comment and share that with the public and with the subcommittee. I apologize for the difficulties that we're having with this today.
Very well, I appreciate it. And I take it that will be at a later point, Secretary?
Yes, it will.
Very well. In which case, no, not a problem. In which case, we'll go ahead and close public comment and bring it back. Member Sawyer, are there any questions that you may have for staff today?
I have a question and a couple of comments. I'm curious about, as far as the study went, Mr. Sprinkle, were protected bike lanes studied as a potential option in this part of Mendocino Avenue?
They were looked at, yes. And as mentioned, the difficulty that we had in looking at implementing them would be that we'd be putting a protected bike lane in between the parklet and the curb, and that didn't seem like a good design to have that pedestrian cross traffic from a parklet potentially to a restaurant, serving across the bike lane. In my understanding, that's not something that's typically done. Maybe it is, and we could do some more research on that to see if that is something that would that could be of a benefit. We did also look at the cycle track option of having the two-way bike lanes on one side of the street, and we could look at that in further detail. My recollection was that we didn't have enough width to install the two bike lanes, and then the required buffer. There's another 3-foot buffer that's required when you do that. And I think we were short maybe a foot, and it was close. So that's something we could look at further and see if we can come up with something a little more innovative to help that. But my recollection in working with Bjorn was that didn't meet the requirements that are required for that type of installation. So, and there was one other item regarding protected bike lanes and the bollards. So that again is an option in a way to install protected bike lanes adjacent to parking. However, it basically precludes any parking along that segment. If you have bollards with a bike lane and then the parking against the curb, you obviously don't have a way to access to get to the curb anymore. So you can see this is a delicate balance between the needs and desires of the community and the use of the public right of way here.
Thank you for that. I know this street was built probably close to 100 years ago. They never anticipated some of these potential uses. It's often a challenge with an older city. The width of our streets, not only were they not actually probably built to carry as much traffic as they're carrying, in many cases, unfortunately, they certainly weren't anticipating the use of bicycles. So it can be a major challenge when dealing with older streets, especially near our city core and our downtown core. I would offer a major caution in having two bike lanes between the sidewalk and the parklets. I mean, I can only imagine, and it just looks like a disaster waiting to happen. A waiter coming out with 4 plates of food, having to look in both directions to make sure a bicycle does not come in their way. And if they were not totally careful, I just, you know, people tend not to already pay much attention when it comes to vehicles, both bicycles and automobiles. So I think that as much as one might be optimistic as to have that as an alternative, I just think that is, like I said, a disaster waiting to happen, both for the people that are on the sidewalk crossing over to the parklet as diners, and then the waiters having to deal with that traffic between them and the diners as well. It may sound like a safe environment to some, but I think it is not. I think it is creating an unsafe situation. The other issue has to do with diagonal parking. I know myself, it's easy to get into a diagonal space. Getting out can be a completely different story, especially when you're dealing with the multitude of RVs and dark windowed vehicles, you know, where you have to edge out inch by inch, backing out into a traffic lane. They have that situation on 4th Street between E Street and Brookwood, at least on one side I know of, I think on both sides, and it is a real challenge to back out. So I think that's also diagonal or horizontal, not horizontal, just the standard parking. If there is parking there, I would not be encouraging diagonal, because one could be backing out potentially into a bike lane. I think it's dangerous and difficult to use as a driver. So I love the idea of protected lanes for bicycles. I wonder whether or not we can have all of our desires here on this 1 or 2 block stretch. Potentially, where there is less retail further north on Mendocino, it might work more easily. But that, of course, doesn't get people into the core. And I'm not sure what the solution is. I just see, I can understand the challenges, and I would love to be able to have a safer way for people to bicycle, but getting all of the uses onto this particular stretch of road, an old roadway that actually used to be a highway, is not easy. It was built for parking and traffic, and little else, unfortunately. But that's the reality of what we're trying to evolve this particular roadway into something that accommodates other uses that were never envisioned by the people that designed our downtown. So I wish you all the best of luck in helping to design something that is both safe, convenient, and attractive to all of the users. And I see a fair amount of compromise on the horizon. So thank you.
Thank you. There was a comment made about the width of the lanes, the ability to have them being narrower. Could you speak on that, Rob?
Yeah, we do have 10-foot lanes, and we would be definitely willing to go down to 10-foot lanes in the segment between 10th and 4th Street. When we get north of 10th Street, that's where our buses start using the lanes, and they require 11-foot travel lanes to make sure their mirrors aren't overhanging and make sure they have the adequate width to move through that segment. So we can definitely look at redesigning that southern section, or looking at that southern section to accommodate extra width, and potentially put in, and I know this isn't what the community is asking for, but I think we could, reduce the bike lane to 5 foot, have a 2-foot buffer, and then a 10-foot travel lane. And that would provide a little bit more of a separation. Granted, it's not a vertical separation or a protected bike lane, but it would provide a little bit more separation in that southern section of the roadway there. So that could be an option where we kind of combined a couple different alternatives along that segment.
And you actually answered my second question, which would be what difference would the extra feet provide? So thank you for that clarification as well. Now, there was a question about the 15 additional parking spaces. Were the 15 additional parking spaces by design or as a unintended consequence or reward? And does ADA have anything to do with that number?
So the 15 extra spaces were actually not, we weren't looking to install 15 more spaces. It was because of the design that we're doing at the intersections and reducing the left turn lanes, that it added additional space that could be used either, again, for bike corrals or for parking or for parklets. So it wasn't that we were intending to, it's basically a byproduct of the design that it allowed for more parking.
Thank you for that clarification. I know it dawned heavily on a lot of our constituents that here we are with the surplus and we're adding more to it. But nonetheless, that was not the intended outcome. And now I also heard placing both bike lanes on one side of the street, and I've heard also arguments against why that would not work. And if we were looking at the street from west to east, what I envisioned, and please tell me what is wrong with this design, if we had parking on the west side or westmost side of the street, and then we had our southbound, northbound lanes, and then we had both bike lanes on the eastern side, followed by a parklet program on where most of our small businesses are located, would that be something that could be considered? And I'll repeat myself just for those that are listening. Parking on the west side, traffic lanes to follow, both bike lanes, and a parklet. What do you foresee at first glance with that recommendation? And I also heard from one of our callers that gave us something similar, but what I was able to come up with was what I just spoke of.
So right when you install that's what I mentioned a little bit ago regarding the cycle track. And when you have a cycle track, typically there's a 3-foot separation between the travel lane and the cycle track. And when you add up that width in conjunction, even I think with reducing the travel lanes to 10 feet, you're still over the allotment of our curb to curb width along there. And I'm willing to look at that again, but that's what I recall when we were doing the initial designs, is that we had some width limitations related to that. And taking this a step further, is I know that also this is only a striping project. There's also, I know, desire to increase sidewalk width along several of, along this area. So all these things are going to be competing for one another in the future. If we want more pedestrian sidewalk width, if we want more bike lane width, if we want something at some point, we'll have to give.
Yes, and I was hoping that the extra added feet might be able to give us that needed buffer zone. But it sounds, and you're absolutely right, we're definitely seeing which one is the best fit. And I understand the concern of both one bike lanes, especially protected ones, and parklets. So the question becomes, do we create a downtown that invites the bicyclist to downtown, or do we create a bicycle lane that leads us to a failing downtown corridor? So it's definitely conflicting. I understand why. Member Sawyer, are there any additional questions, or from staff, comments or questions that in regards to this item?
No, thank you. Chair Alvarez, I think I've voiced my cautions and my questions. I don't have any additional. Thank you.
Absolutely. It's going to be interesting what the future input from our community as well as our fellow colleagues will be. Kind of reminds me of a story that my dad tells. So everybody will tell you put the door, but ultimately there's only one place that's correct for the door, and it's not on the second story. That I do know to be true. With that being said, we will go ahead and move on to the written updates on item written update summary. Raisa, I believe this is your department, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so we do receive, we've moved from oral reports to written reports for the two community benefit districts, downtown and Railroad Square, as well as parking and our special events. So I do encourage people to access those on the agenda. But just to give a very quick summary on those, from the written report from the downtown community benefit district, Left Edge Theater is now open. So we now have another performing arts theater, this time on the Courthouse Square side on 7th Street. It's amazing. Have seen, I think all of us in economic development have seen the first play there. And also 3rd Street Ale Works, Bayou on the Bay is now the pop-up restaurant at 3rd Street Ale Works. They just had an opening, and so I encourage people to go there. In terms of events that are listed on their report, on October 28th, there's the Fall Fun Fest. And then Winter Lights and Skating is coming back in November and December. Speaking of events in Railroad Square, the events that they highlighted on October 9th is the Last Summer Music Stroll event that they have. And then in December, November and December, they're planning their to return their traditional holiday activities. So like carriage rides and such what. So that's always a good, fun tradition down there. Also in Railroad Square, their business directory sign should be coming in October. And I just wanted to highlight this because there might be some confusion on wayfinding. So the city is doing a wayfinding program through the transit department, working with MTC. And this is really more of a business directory thing. So those should be up, I think, in October, November. And then also they have some new businesses coming down there. Papillon Floral is now in Railroad Square, as is the Princess Boutique, which is a kid shop. And where the old Tony's restaurant, I think it was called Tony's, Zin restaurant is going to be coming, but we don't have an opening date for that yet. And then the last thing I wanted to highlight was from parking, just to give a little heads up that the Lot 10 reconstruction, and Lot 10 is the lot behind Russian River Brewery. The reconstruction of that lot starts in fall of 2023. And then importantly, we are having the Surplus Land Act study session, discussion on intensifying the uses of some of our aging downtown assets, which are mostly lots and garages. And that study session is happening on October 11th. And the Surplus Land Act process is the thing that we're required to go through, or cities are required to go through in order to release city parcels for other uses. It goes through the Housing and Community Development Department of the state. So that's just the process that we have to do in order to release, to consider the release of properties that the city owns. So that's the highlight of the written reports, and that's all I have for that.
Additional, Raisa, could we maybe the definition of Facade improvement funds for those of us who haven't heard what funds are being made available to our community?
Sure. So what if we do public comments on
Absolutely.
the written reports, and then I'll get straight into the department reports, and we can do.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. I'm sorry. I did jump in. You did tell me that it was going to be for the department,
That's
not on
okay.
the written updates. With that being said, let's go ahead and open up public comment on item 4, 4.1 through 4.4.
We have no raised hands at this time, nor were there any additional public comments for these items.
Good deal, good deal. So we'll go ahead and bring it back. Let's go ahead and move on to item 5, department reports.
So I'll do something really quick, and then we'll get into that facade improvement.
All right, very well.
But I love your enthusiasm because it's a good program. So the first thing I want to let you know is that in working with the city manager's office, we are going to be moving from monthly downtown subcommittee meetings to every other month. This allows us a moment to because we've got two subcommittees that are pretty hefty, or sometimes pretty hefty in terms of policy items, the Economic Development Subcommittee and the Downtown Subcommittee. So we're going to alternate those on a monthly basis, which means that the Downtown Subcommittee is going to move from monthly to every other month. So I just wanted to give you a heads up on that. It allows us some time to develop the agendas between the meetings. And then we have two other, unless Tara and Raphael have other things they want to talk about, but we have two other department reports. And so I'm going to hand it over to Tara because she can talk about the facade improvement as well as the public art program, the Arts District stuff.
Greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, Chair Alvarez and Member
Good
Sawyer.
morning.
Hi, thanks for having me this morning. I have a few brief updates to provide on the public art program, and I'll include a few other department reports as well, including the facade improvement program.
Thank you.
So first off, the Unum sculpture for Courthouse Square. We are working with the artist Blessing Hancock and her fabrication team to accommodate the ADA requirements for the base of the sculpture. That's where we're at right now in the process. The timeline is still estimated that the sculpture will be installed by the end of this year, probably just right under that. And I'll provide more updates at the next meeting as we get closer to knowing the specific dates of being on site and the work scheduled. For our conservation and maintenance that's ongoing, the Peanuts bronze in Depot Park has been fully cleaned and treated. This happened over the last month or so. And then the fence surrounding it, the low green fence, was also repainted, and all of the plaques on it with the Peanuts characters polished. It looks great. Our conservation team did an excellent job. The Schultz family had been taking care of all of the bronze pieces that are part of the city's collection. And so now we've transitioned to having the city's conservation team do this work, but the Schultz Family Foundation is still contributing to their maintenance. The other two bronzes that are part of our collection, the Marcy bench near the library on 4th Street and the Schroeder and Lucy piece at the Finley courtyard, will also be treated soon. The Asawa art panels, the engineering and design drawings are currently being finalized and will be sent over to the fountain contractor as soon as possible so that they can incorporate that into their submittal to the city to start construction for the fountain. So we're getting closer. That's it for the public art program, but then I have two other department reports that I'll briefly go over. So starting with facade improvement grants. So the small business support program is something that we're working on. It's an ARPA funded project. And the goal of this program is to encourage economic development and destination awareness of historically underinvested areas by enhancing the exterior appearance and commercial viability of the storefront businesses. One element of the program is to provide facade improvement grants to small businesses that can include expenses towards paint, signage, landscaping, exterior lighting, awnings, canopies, windows, parklet build outs is included, and compliance with ADA requirements. Another component of the program is to do placemaking facade improvements. And so we're partnering with the public art program to have murals or other public art be put on buildings, on the exterior of the buildings or on the exterior of parklets. Participating businesses will be paired with a public art project manager who will work with them to design public art on site at no expense to the business. And so the eligibility that's been determined for that is essentially a small business. You have to meet the definition of a small impacted business as set by the final rule as determined through the ARPA funding. And so it's less, essentially the business has to have 500 employees or less and experienced impacts due to COVID, financial impacts due to COVID. And we have come up with two phases, hopefully two phases. First phase is prioritizing the Roseland commercial areas, San Rosa Avenue, Petaluma Hill Road commercial areas, and downtown commercial areas. So we actually have a website that has a map on it, so businesses can go check to see if they're in that phase one, in those phase one areas and eligible to apply. Hopefully, if funding allows, we would be launching a phase 2 in mid 2023, where the other commercial areas on our eligibility map would become available. So the application will be coming soon. It's not quite open yet. We just completed a survey of businesses to gather feedback on program elements and the structure of how we would roll out this support program. And we anticipate the applications will be available online later this month.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then one last small update, and please chime in, Raphael, if you have more to add to this, but the Public Art Program and the Economic Development Division in as a whole, we're participating in the Bay Area Manufacturing Week. And it's sponsored by SF Made. It takes place October 7th through 14th. And the 2 events that are coordinated by the Public Art Program are really meant to highlight artists as manufacturers. So we have a bodywork and aesthetics artist and a clothing artist lined up to give studio tours and demos here in Santa Rosa during that week. And Raphael, I know that you have coordinated many of the other events that we are highlighting. So please chime in.
Yeah, there's a couple of, thank you, Tara. And it's very exciting. It's our second time participating. We are a sponsor of this initiative as well. So we're working very closely with the Bay Area manufacturing folks. And there'll be 3 coordinated tours. So be on the lookout on our social media channels, as well as on the sfmade.org website. It's very exciting. And we are including one at the taking place at the Hattery on Petaluma Hill Road. And folks will be able to view the hat making at that shop on Saturday, October 8th.
October 8th, perfect.
And then we have the other breweries, right, Raphael?
Yes, there'll be a tour open to the public, and there's already Eventbrite links created. So again, be on the lookout on our social media channels, as well as the sfmade.org website. But we have one scheduled at the Old Possum on October 8th from 1 to 2, one at Hen House on Wednesday, and one at Cooperage on Thursday, also from 3 to 4. And those are also promised to be very exciting.
Very well. Well, thank you for those reports. Member Sawyer, do you have any questions or comments on item 5?
I don't. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm good to go.
I was gonna say, I'll see you at any one of those establishments here pretty soon, huh? If there are no further comments or questions on item 5, let's go ahead and open it up for public comment.
We have no raised hands at this time.
Very well. Go ahead and close public comment on item number 5. Additional comments from me. It's we spoke about the funds for the Facade improvements, and I believe Member Sawyer spoke to this in the August meeting that we had. The support from our colleagues to small businesses is absolutely true and non-faltering. So we're hoping that we can continue to support our small businesses, especially through the pandemic that we've all just survived. So with that being said, when downtown Santa Rosa thrives, all of Santa Rosa thrives. And I say that for every different shopping center, for every shop that exists within our city of Santa Rosa, and even our county of Sonoma. So with that being said, let's go ahead and move on to item number 6, future agenda planning.
So that really is a question if you have anything that you, as members of this committee, wanted us to look into, and we will work with the city manager's office to see if we can accommodate that. So any special items that you guys have?
Member Sawyer, would you like to chime in?
I feel like this committee has a fair amount on its plate. It'd be nice to be able to concentrate on those issues that we already are working on, and to be able to come to where there is completion. Some are ongoing and will always be on the agenda. but there are others that that require staff time. And at this point, especially as we move into the holiday season, I know that the DAO is actively involved in creating an experience for shoppers and families in the downtown. So I don't really have anything to add to the agenda. And there will be new council members coming on after the next election, and that may change, or there may be issues that they would like to bring forward. So I personally think there's plenty on the plate of both of staff and then ultimately the committee. I think that moving to every other month is a good idea. One can always ask for a special meeting if necessary, but I think that again, we probably have more subcommittees active and moving along now than we have ever had. So where we can reduce some of the activity on the part of staff and council for that matter, I'm supportive of that. So I have nothing to add to your plate at this point, staff. And again, if the need presents itself, this committee can always have a special meeting to deal with something that might pop up that we did not anticipate. So I'm comfortable with the schedule and the agenda as it sits, and the future agenda as well. So I'm comfortable with that. Thank you for the offer.
Thank you, Member Sawyer. For myself, I think I'm going to echo those statements. We have the Mendocino corridor that we really need to focus on. We have, and actually the pending question of the development fees and how they can be used for the park or downtown, and the different interpretation of how those fees can be used, and seeing how we're expanding the uses of our downtown corridor. And it's really a question that is, I won't say pending, but definitely important for how we move forward and how our future council members interpret those funds, especially when it being applied to our downtown area. And again, how important the health of the economy here within downtown is for the rest of Santa Rosa. And for me, as stated before, tying up those loose ends and seeing what 2023 brings. Hopefully a lot of good stuff for the city of Santa Rosa. With that being said, if no other comments, let's go ahead and open up the item for public comment, and hopefully the community can let us know what some of those future agendas should look like.
We do have a public comment. Just one moment while I pull up that screen. And I apologize for the delay. And the speaker will be Gig Hightow. Mr. Hightow, if you would confirm your ability to see the timer and introduce yourself if you so choose.
I see the timer. Gig Hideout. I live in the Burbank Gardens neighborhood, and I would like to see the police report, which used to be an agenda item. I don't know if that was in your written reports or not, but I think it would be good to have a police report at the downtown subcommittee meetings, just to hear what they're saying, but also because there are a lot of issues that happen in our neighborhood and surrounding neighborhoods, some of which are appropriate for police officers to be involved, and many of them are not appropriate for police officers to be involved, that the citizens need to take the responsibility themselves to be dealing with these things. But I think just by having a police report, at least we get to talk about that. So that's my only suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And we have no additional hands raised at this time.
Perfect. We'll go ahead and close item 6.0. And is it possible to add the police, as we did in the past, to our reports?
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll reach out to Chief Cregan and see. It might be. I think it'd probably be better to be an oral report versus a written report. It's just easier to be, excuse me, more fluid and, excuse me.
No problem. And I was going to say also for
myself.
No, I was going to say also for the conversation with the community, or at least be able to answer the questions in real time.
Exactly. Yeah. So we will ask that someone be made available, and I think it'll be easier and better now that the cadence of the meeting is every other month. I think it'll be easier for them to do that.
Phenomenal. Thank you. Well, if there are no additional comments or questions, I think we can move on to item 7.0, which is the adjournment of our meeting. Being that there are none, the time is now 9:54, and enjoy Santa Rosa. Have a great day.